We know the social costs of poverty and low wages. We all are aware that sooner or later the state pays for this. When you have poverty, you have health issues. When you have poverty, you have crime issues. When you have poverty, it impacts the education of our children. Poverty permeates society in a corrosive way. Connecticut is a high cost of living state. To keep a family healthy and strong, a working family, you need to make a living wage. That's one of the reasons I've been a strong supporter of the $15 an hour movement, $15 in a union movement, because traditionally government has been one of the few instruments, a progressive government, one of the few instruments that helps working people, and the other one is labor organizations that advocate for their interests. Those are the two most powerful tools in the arsenal of helping working families, a progressive government and strong labor unions. Now, we've been running into a trouble with Connecticut taxes. We have an income tax, we have a sales tax, but they're not producing the revenues. As you can see, we're in a crisis right now, facing a $1.7 billion deficit. Well, part of the reason is after 2008, wages have gone down in the state of Connecticut. It's no secret that the sales tax and the income tax are tied to wages. As people make more money, they can contribute more to our taxes. They have more discretionary money to spend. They can spend. That helps our sales tax produce revenues. It lowers the dependency on social service programs and cuts the cost of the states in terms of incarceration and many of the other problems that we face when poverty hits a community. And I can talk about that from my experience. I'm not going to talk about all the problems that poverty causes, but in my community, people try to stretch a dollar by going and shopping at dollar stores. And unfortunately, much of what is sold there as food is nothing more than sugar, disguised with colors and additives and chemicals. And in the end, it leads to obesity, diabetes, and a bunch of other social costs. Kids have to grow up without their parents, because parents have to work 2 and 3 jobs to try to make ends meet, so kids are growing up on their own with little parental supervision. So this is the kind of impact that low wages has on our communities. Now, corporate profits are at an all-time high, and where do these profits go? Well, they go to the investors of a lot of these large publicly traded corporations. So when these dollars leave Connecticut, billions of dollars in profits go to Wall Street investors and leave the state, the money does not recirculate into our economy. So a small percentage of those corporate profits staying in the state of Connecticut in the form of higher wages for working families would mean that a percentage of that money would benefit our community and would recirculate in our community, which is the reason that I believe it would have a positive impact on small business. Many of the people opposing the raising of the minimum wage claim that this is going to hurt small business. In my community, most of the small businesses don't really care what the minimum wage is, because it's mostly based on sweat equity of extended families that work the hours they need to work. Whether they make a profit or not, they're trying to make that business succeed, and it's done largely through sweat equity. When you really figure out what some of these small business owners make, maybe they only make $1 an hour. When you think about the fact that they're working 14 hours a day, 7 days a week to make their business succeed, and it's mostly family operations. However, on the other side of the ledger, which would be if people had a little more discretionary income to spend, on that side of the ledger, small business would see an increase in profits. So I sustain that in the bigger picture, small business would benefit from families having a little more to spend in their communities and having more of those dollars stay locally in our economy in Connecticut. The last issue that I'd like to address is, will $15 an hour in 2022 really close the gap? Well, we know that the difference between a living wage and $15 an hour there'll still be a substantial gap. Cost of living will continue to rise. By 2022, $15 an hour will probably be sorely inadequate to keep a family within a living wage range. However, if we do nothing today, this is why this year is so important. If we don't move the ball down the court in terms of trying to close that gap, and we reach 2022 and we found out that now people need $20 to barely make it, and we're still at 10-10, then the argument will be, well, the gap is too wide to address. We can't really close that gap. We'll bankrupt businesses. So let's move the ball down the field, and when we find that $15 an hour really hasn't completely closed the gap, at least we'll be a little closer to our goal of getting working families where they need to be.